So I actually do have some good news, which is nice, because, well, everything's been bad, right? And now I'm going to try not to enjoy this too much, but it's because the base topic is, of course, one of the worst things that's ever happened in Britain. But we've been collectively talking about this for many years now. I think I did the first video I made on this in 2014 after the Alexis J report came out. I was like, wow, that's horrific. Maybe we should be considering this as a major crime. And it's been a long time that we've been banging this drum. And so now to finally get some movement on the issue of the grooming gangs in the United Kingdom, the ethnically motivated, sort of ethno-religiously motivated grooming gangs in the United Kingdom, it's just honestly a sense of relief. Oh, thank God. Thank God this is, finally sort of the dam is breaking and it's all flooding out.
If I may very quickly, Carl, I put out a tweet last night that said this issue was really one of the first things that got me properly interested in politics, because as you do when you're a kid, right? I googled my own name, Charlie Downs. Up pops the case of Charlene Downs, and I then read that when I was in my teens, and I was like, my goodness, like the fact that this kind of thing is going on in Britain. I had no idea about it at the time. Wasn't taught about it at school. No. Well, wasn't seeing it in the news or anything like that. And it was really, you said it's one of the worst things that's happened in Britain's history. I actually would make the case that it is the worst thing, the worst set of events to ever happen on the British Isles, worse than the harrying of the North, worse than the Viking invasions, worse than the Blitz.
I don't think they're worse than those. It's worse than the Blitz. It's probably not worse than those things, but we are quite separate in time from. But
what I would say is those were a consequence of a fairly conventional invasion, right? Whereas this is a consequence of a ruling class that's completely betrayed the population of this country, brought in these savages who have then gone on to commit these crimes and then covered up, covered it up. Yeah. So it's an institutional thing, which I think is why it's just so despicable.
Yeah, and so I'd like to give a lot of props to right-wing Twitter, basically, because they decided to bring this right front and centre at the very beginning of the new year. I don't know why day 1 of January was the day, but everyone started posting about the grooming gangs, and I was like, yeah, no, good point. Since we're, if everyone's going to do it, I'm going to get in on it as well, because it's just such an open wound that has not been allowed to begin to heal, because no one's been brought to justice, really. Okay, yeah, the gang members themselves have gone to jail. Okay, great, that's great. But as I point out here, these men were trafficking these girls to various cities where they would be prostituted. Well, who were the men that they were being prostituted to? What communities were they being prostituted to? All of the MPs, the councillors, the police at the various different levels of the state. Why has there been no accountability for that? And so this, like I said, it's a festering wound, and everyone started kicking it off. And it was great to see. It was like, no, it wasn't coordinated, but it was kind of like a natural upswell from writing Twitter. This is an issue we want resolved, and it's morally just, and it needs to happen. And it was really nice to see, people getting in on this. People who are, important, famous, and have much bigger reach than the rest of us. Elon Musk replied to a bunch of my tweets on this, which was very nice. And it's one thing I like about Elon Musk. There are lots of people who've got their complaints about Elon. Yeah, okay, he's not perfect. He's under a lot of pressure, I imagine. But he's been completely consistent on the children actually should not be victimized position. Yeah. So he's got that kind of daddist streak in him. I mean, one of the first things he did with Twitter when he took it over was he took over and found, there's a lot of CP on this platform. Why would that be? And then he banned that. And then that all went to Blue Sky for some reason. But anyway, so Elon has been weighing in on this consistently, and he just decided to go on essentially a day-long crusade about this subject. And it's amazing. It's finally, thank God, the richest, most followed man in the world is calling attention to this issue. So thank God, right? So Liz Truss began tweeting about it. You can see 34 million views on this tweet because there were lots and lots of people like Sam here who were pointing out just the atrocious injustices that, again, have been festering unresolved for over a decade now, where in this particular case, as you can see, parents who were attempting to rescue their children were arrested by the police when the police were called by the grooming gangs to prevent them from breaking in and rescuing their own daughters. Like, it's just unbelievable. And this is coming to the attention of the Americans who are like, how can this be real? It's like, yes, we've been trapped in a nightmare Blairite dystopia for 2 decades now, and finally people are realizing how bad this has been. And so good on Liz Truss. Good on Liz Truss.
Something else that I think about all things in life, but this especially, is there is such a thing as, like a cosmic moral debt. Like something like this doesn't just go away, right? It will manifest itself in some way. And I have long believed that if it is not dealt with properly and handled with a degree of seriousness and severity by the authorities, and this is, to be clear, not in any way an incitement to this, then I think that the way that this will manifest itself is just riots in an order that we haven't seen.
Well, that's what the Southport riots were about.
Yes,
the Southport riots were the issue that has gone unspoken, manifesting itself in ways that they don't want.
But this is the point. I mean, like you said, it's an open wound, and it doesn't just the authorities can ignore it, but it's not just going to go away. The wounds are still open.
And that's what Liz Truss is pointing out. It's the authorities who turned a blind eye in the name of not inflaming racial tensions. Well, I'm sorry, but when you've got one group being predatory to another, the tensions are there whether you like them or not.
So I do actually have a bit of insight on this. So I released a report recently in which I basically made the case that it appears, if you look at the data, that the authorities are actively suppressing the recording and reporting of ethnicity data when it comes to sexual assaults and rapes. Because if you look at statistics out of London for all sexual assaults and rapes, and if you look at child sexual abuse nationwide, you'll see that age and sex are recorded almost every time, almost in 100% of cases. Whereas if you look at ethnicity, it's about a quarter of the time. And this is not, and so that points to something like a cover-up. That points to the fact that they could be recording this data if they wanted to, but they aren't. The argument that I made was that this is due to interpretation of the Equality Act, right? As so many ills of modern Britain are. If you look at Section 149 of the Equality Act, it mandates that public bodies seek to foster good relations between different groups. Essentially, they use the term groups with protected characteristics and groups without blah blah blah, whatever. It doesn't matter. But this, this appears to be. This is not some accident, right? This is not. And it's not even a choice at the individual level. It's because of policy. It's because
been a conscious policy to try and protect the Pakistani Muslim community from the reputation they would otherwise have incurred. From this behaviour.
But this is the point. This idea of not inflaming racial tensions. This is actually, the mechanism by which that happens. It's because the authorities don't want to, create tension.
They create and maintain a state of active injustice in the country, and so people are furious.
It's disgusting.
Yeah, it is disgusting.
It's disgusting. You're culpable. You're part of the crimes, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, hang on.
Because what is happening?
We'll get to that.
What is happening is that inflamed racial group tensions between people is not coming about because people are made aware of crimes that are being done. It's done because of the crimes. That's what inflames the racial tensions. If you want to prevent the racial tensions, you're going to have to prevent the crimes. And in the cases of large-scale communities all being complicit in it through silence or active involvement, well, I'm sorry, you're going to have to remove those communities.
But doesn't... Hang on. We'll get to all this. Let me carry on. Because you're not alone in that thought. Anyway, so, people like J.K. Rowling were tweeting about it. And the reason that I point this out is because these are, J.K. Rowling's got what, how many millions of followers does J.K. Rowling have? 14 million followers. Liz Truss's tweet got 34 million views. Elon Musk himself, again, most followed man in the world, as far as I can tell, 200 million followers. This is an issue that is becoming undeniable and unavoidable, right? And so it's good to see, again, they're not all right on every issue or anything like that, but this is an issue on which they are right, and it's very, very much to their credit that they're actually really slamming this on the table and saying, listen, watch Tommy Robinson's documentary. Elon Musk tweeted this. Elon Musk's pinned tweet is currently free Tommy Robinson.
The Overton window, I've never seen it shift so rapidly.
It's just blown wide open. Yeah, this is just superb. Again, you don't have to agree with everything Tommy Robinson has ever done or said or his positions on various things, but on this particular issue, he is right, and it's good that I don't know how to describe them, the centre-right are getting behind this and saying, no, this is a correct thing. That's a good thing to push, and there's no point counter-signaling it. And again, you've got lots of people. James McMurdoch from Reform. And this is a great point that he's making here, right? So in the last couple of days, Labour have launched new review every 2.5 days, right? So that's a huge number of reviews that they've been doing. And yet when it came to the grooming gangs, yeah, we're not going to have that. We're not going to have an inquiry into the grooming gang scandal. So as James points out, what would you infer from this? Well, that this is policy.
I would also infer from this that, the inquiries that are being conducted are essentially, they're not actually aimed at solving anything, would be, one thing you could conclude. It seems to just be a kind of, the managerial state justifying its own existence. Because that's the way that our system works now, is it just creates itself continuously.
The cogs just keep turning.
Would you trust Labour to do an impartial review of this in the first place? Was it the 2020 review done by the Home Office, which was almost explicitly just to try and simmer down the tensions and try to make excuses for actions that have been taken by saying, well, actually, it's not all of them.
Yeah.
It's not literally every single foreign person in the country is grooming children. So therefore, you can't say anything.
And another thing is the equivocation. It's like, yes, but like the majority of people molested are molested by white men. Therefore what? Therefore, there's no problem.
Even though if you actually read the details of the data, it's not that at all. It's actually, no, they are majority Asian gangs.
Yeah. But that's the point. They're saying, well, they're mixing together two different kinds of phenomenon. And of course, per capita, you would expect that because of this majority English white country. Anyway, so good for Reform MPs, and Nigel Farage has tweeted about this, and various others tweeted about this, for getting in on it. Elon has been going really hard on this, and man, this is just so good. As he says here, in the UK, serious crimes such as rape require the Crown Prosecution Service's approval for the police to charge suspects. Who was the head of the CPS when rape gangs were allowed to exploit young girls without facing justice? Keir Starmer, 2008 to 2013. Going very hard.
Yeah.
Very, very hard.
I would also add that at that time, when Keir Starmer was the Director of Public Prosecutions, was around the time that the suppression of ethnicity data started, that I was talking about earlier.
And people are just posting, things from that time, like newspaper articles from that time, pointing out that, he actually was the one making the executive decision on this. And he was, no, they're not that big a deal, in fact. We don't want to stoke racism now, do we?
Yeah, these people are my clients, thinks Keir Starmer.
Yeah, this is probably literally...
I stopped that man from getting deported. Why would I charge him now?
Well, they're really the victims of a racist society, don't you understand?
It's strangely fitting that at this time in British history we have this man as our supposed leader.
Yeah, he is.
You think?
And on your point there, just Carl, I know you said it offhand, but it is remarkable that you get like German psychiatrists basically making that argument, which is, well, it's an expression of the rage that comes from being displaced within society and the racial isolation that they feel. So therefore, please, Your Honour, don't give him a sentence.
Yeah, you know what? I'm not sympathetic to that at all, weirdly enough. But one of the good things that Elon promoted was Charlie Peters and his investigation. Yeah, he's a really a long-time warrior on this subject. And Charlie, in fact, has a fantastic thread here. You should go and look at it in your own time, where he just goes through his extensive research into the grooming gang phenomenon. And as you can see, he's doing an incredibly thorough job.
Yeah, he is one of the finest journalists in Britain today.
Yeah, and we are such a dearth of good journalists. But again, 15 million views, spectacular. You love to see it. This is a great start to 2025, and I'm absolutely adoring this. So if I seem excited, it's not about the subject, it's about the prominence of the subject coming into the British public discourse. Because you can imagine what Labour's Führer bunker was like this morning, because this all was happening quite late in the evening and through the night, because it was the Americans ginning a lot of this up, and so they must have woken up and looked at their Twitter notifications and gone, which good.
No, so there's nothing wrong. What we're getting excited about is the justice.
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with being excited about justice.
Might come for the people who have done this. Because there are lots of people who have just suffered for decades. There are grooming gang survivors on Twitter, like Sarah here, saying, "Look, I don't know if that's her name. She's got to post anonymously, obviously, because there's real chance of actual backlash in these communities that still have to live cheek by jowl with their abusers." Right. So anyway, she gives us a harrowing account that, of course, we've all I assume in this sphere we're all aware of. So I'm not going to linger on that too much. But then you get the denialists, right? And now Ella Cobain here was one of the worst, absolutely one of the worst, because she has for years now been denying that this is something to do with the Pakistani Muslim community, which is just impossible to come to unless you are actually trying to cover up for them. And great post here by Alma, who points out that if you actually read her analysis, she finds that, 40-fold overrepresentation of Pakistani men among perpetrators. She can't explain this, and so she tries to just deny it and pretend that it's not an issue. And it's like, no, it's good that these denialists have been held up and pilloried over this. Absolutely pilloried. This is disgusting. Like, why is she in defense of the Pakistani community when they're raping English girls? She is an English woman.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
And again, there's something I always come back to when I find myself getting extremely heated and worked up about these things, is how history will remember these people. Because I have absolutely no doubt that justice will be served on this particular issue. And you know, in 100, 200 years' time, you will read the name Dr. Ella Cobain as a collaborator, as a suppressor.
I think collaborator is the right word.
Someone complicit in all of this.
Absolutely. Anyway, you've also got Helen Braley here, who, of course, denied the Asian grooming gangs, the Pakistani Muslim grooming gangs. As Jacques' paper point out here, the current obsession with Asian sex gangs, quote-unquote, focuses too narrowly on one dimension to this crime, making the emergent profile of Pakistani groomer misleading. She's now a deputy director in the Home Office. So Britain is being run by the people...
By the collaborators.
By the people who literally are the inheritors of the Blairite Project, to bring in this community, to rub our faces in diversity, and then to cover up this community's crimes against us. And it's no coincidence that this community votes 90% for the Labour Party. Right? It's no coincidence. And the collaborators are in government, the architects of this.
These people, I just don't know how, surely this woman has a niece, maybe even a daughter of her own.
She was a girl herself once.
She was a girl herself. How can you look in the mirror after saying things like this, after looking at the facts of the matter? Yes.
But just these it's so treacherous that, again, I try not to think about it. I'm just thinking about the good that is coming out of this, which is the Americans, thank God, with their huge profiles, just like raining down fire on them. And again, I will not hear criticisms of Elon Musk on this particular subject at the very least. All right. Elon, again, just to point out, the country is run by the people who are behind all of this, right? Keir Starmer, Jess Phillips, this woman, Helen Braley, like the country is run by these people. And again, that's the Ella Cobain one. But her own research found that 96% of the rape gang offenders were non-white and 80% were Pakistani. And her conclusion was, look, guys, there's nothing to see here.
Well, I think something that is important to note here, right, is the entire, liberal project, the entire project of multiculturalism is founded on the notion that there is no such thing as groups, basically. Yeah. When the rubber hits the road, everyone's an individual. Yeah. And so if you are able to draw group, judgments about groups on the basis of what the majority of that group, not the majority of that group,
significant portion
of that group does, if you're able to notice trends and patterns of behaviour, then if you then draw a conclusion that maybe there's a problem in the Pakistani community in Britain with raping, young English girls, then the entire rest of the project falls apart. Yeah. Because then all the other assumptions, that's built on, they just collapse.
It's also built on the idea that there's no moral distinction between these groups. But I'm sorry, I think there are enough cases at this point when you have grooming gangs operating in 24 plus different cities, and it's always the same pattern, it's always the same kind of man. Yeah. And you just some of the stories where like a girl, like 14-year-old girl is raped, goes to a police station, but raped by a Pakistani man, goes to a police station, the police go, no, go away. Yeah. And then she's raped on the way home by a different Pakistani man. You say, look, there is an ethical problem with this community. The very nature of their ethical system has to be the thing that we're questioning here, right? Like, I just... The amount of, like, ones where it's like, oh, yeah, these three friends got together and then plied a 12-year-old with drugs and raped her. I'm like, I can't even imagine having a conversation like that with any of my friends. I was like, look, I've got some drugs. There's a 12-year-old over there. She's vulnerable. What are we doing, guys? And they'd be like, what do you mean? The hell do you mean? I'd be like, oh yeah, good point. I probably shouldn't have said that out loud, but no, apparently this is something completely common in this community. And it's like, that has to be talked about.
And I've got to say as well,
failures.
just in terms of the attitude of some people, some of the native British on this issue. I mean, I have friends who I've had conversations with when the topic of politics comes up, who are just completely unable to escape, what I would call the mind prison of relativism, where they cannot bring themselves to draw distinctions between groups because, for fear of whatever, being called racist or, not being liberal enough or whatever else. Because and I point to these things, I say, look at the grooming gangs, for example, look at cultures where cannibalism is normal. Is that worse or better than what we are? And they'll say, well, it's just different. It's not better or worse.
Okay, but even then, on that note, it is different.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to have a preference? And of course I'm allowed to have a preference. So I prefer ours to theirs, right? They can prefer theirs over there as much as they want. Not my problem, in Papua New Guinea or something where they're being cannibals. I don't care as long as they stay over there. Not my problem. In my country, in my culture, I have a preference for mine. I'm totally allowed to have it. And our preference deserves to be the predominant one. Anyway, carrying on. Elon Musk just hammering this constantly. There must be accountability. And again, why have police allowed the grooming and rape and murder of British children for over 40 years? Great question. Why? And this keeps going because, of course, Jess Phillips decided, when asked, to reject a couple of days ago a call for a government inquiry into the grooming gang scandal. She wanted to just kick it down to Oldham Council. Now, the councils have been deeply involved in this scandal, in the cover-up itself. Not that I think anyone in the Labour Party wouldn't also be involved in the cover-up, but the point is that's a morally irresponsible thing to do. We're going to say the people who oversaw the grooming gangs are going to be responsible for interrogating the grooming gangs. No, I don't think so. And so Elon Musk's response to this was shameful conduct, throw her out, and send her to prison.
Happy 2025.
Yeah, this is a great start to 2025. I mean, I was like, there's going to be a meltdown over this. And Elon Musk, he actually replied to my tweet and then some other people's tweets on this. Because, I mean, oh yeah, there we go, good. Like, this is the kind of energy I want 2025 to be met with, right? Like, throwing our political opponents in jail for allowing children to be raped, and the richest, most followed man in the world is like, yeah, good. That's where things should be.
But Carl, for you personally, right, this must be an incredibly satisfying moment because you're someone who's been called every name under the sun for many years at this point for basically speaking the truth about issues like this, and it must be incredibly, gratifying to actually have this recognised by some of the most powerful people in the world who may actually have the means to actually do something about it.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm having trouble suppressing a smile. The subject itself is unbelievably macabre, but the fact that we're getting some motion on this, again, at the very beginning of 2025 is a really optimistic portent for me. And I'm feeling very, very white-pilled about things at the moment. And it's just so nice to see them actually, because the great thing about this is there is just no counterattack from the left. There's nothing they can counter. Anything they say is going to be construed, because it is, as a defense of the rape of children.
Yes,
right?
As it should be.
Exactly. And that's exactly what it is. And so you've got just Elon just going so hard. Again, just people equivocating on TV. Oh, well, the director of public prosecutions here. And Elon Musk's like, what a pathetic cuck. Throw him in prison too. Love it. This is the right energy. 100%. This is exactly the right energy. And you've got just people all over going like, they want rather
so dark.
Children's capital of culture in like 2022 as well, which is just grim. It's like, right.
And you know that was a conscious decision.
You know why they're doing it.
Yeah.
You know why they're doing it. They are trying to paper over the festering wound, and it's not gonna work, because now we have like the British right with this particular moral issue. We have international backing now on in the most just the biggest megaphones in the world, and we have MPs.
Can we very quickly, just real quick, go back to that previous one? Look at those two words there. For everyone. For everyone got us here. Yeah. For everyone gives you grooming gangs.
Can we not do it for the children? Yeah. Actually, for them. But we've not only got the eye of the most rich and powerful men in the world, but we also have MPs in this country who actually are getting it. Yeah. Now, Rupert Lowe, as you can see, I've said here, is by a long way the best politician in Britain, in my opinion. Man. Yeah. And he posted, "We should also be ferociously pushing to deport family members of these men who were aware of the heinous crimes their husbands, fathers, brothers and sons were committing on young British girls. They knew about it and did nothing. Out, gone, deported, and never allowed back." And someone's like, well, the whole communities in those areas would have been aware. And Rupert just replies with, "Then so be it."
Perfect.
Good. They knew. They all knew. And they did nothing. And in fact, in many cases, they decided they would cover up for their family members because for them, the tie to that family member was more important than the justice that was the injustices that were being committed and the need for justice. Like it's not on.
Yeah. I mean, 2 quick points. I mean, one, in terms of the covering for family members, not to go into dangerous waters here, but let's not forget about the fact that many in the Pakistani community are married to their cousin. And so there is a greater degree of, interwovenness in these communities because, that's the way that these people operate. And the second thing, just in terms of what you were saying before about how, you go to your mates and say, "Oh, lads, I've got this girl, blah, blah, blah." I remember a couple of years back reading a story about how there were other school children involved. Boys would come in their school uniforms and rape the girls. Think of that. Think about that.
I try not to.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where it's just like, I don't know anyone that I could bring that proposal to. Right? I know that every single friend, in fact, every friend I've ever had would look in horror if that was...
call the police on you.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. They would call the police, and rightly so, were that to come out of my mouth. And so the fact that this is just so normal in these communities, so your face man is just like... The fact that it's so normal, Rupert is completely on the money here. There needs to be an accounting for this, and I'm sorry, it goes beyond just the individual men who were involved in the gang themselves. Yeah. Because again, they had customers, they had friends and family members who all knew all about this. This is a congenital problem with the community. Yeah.
I hope you appreciated that segment from the podcast, The Lotus Eaters, and if you want to see what else we're up to, you can watch one of our book clubs. This one looking at How to Be Right by James O'Brien. Yeah, thanks, Harry, for reading that one. And if you want to see all the other things that we're putting out, you can always follow us on Twitter. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.